YouTube! My name is Nye from Finale Guitar in Sheffield. You join me once again on my YouTube channel, Folk Friend, your one-stop shop for Celtic backing guitar tutorials. In this video I'm going to be showing you some chords which you can use in very much the wrong way. What I'm going to be doing is using chords popularised by Django Reinhardt for Gypsy jazz, and I'm going to be using them to back a reel in A dorian. Tune-wise, what I'm using is Matt Coleman's recording of the Star of Munster. I'd like to say thank you for Matt Coleman for being one of the only people to record tunes with a click track so that he's keeping a definite rhythm which doesn't change throughout the recording with no backing. It's really, really useful. So if you're looking for recordings of tunes to play along with, go and check out Matt Coleman's YouTube channel. But yeah, so in this one he's playing the Star of Munster at 113 beats per minute. And I'll just give you a little demo of some of the ways that you might be able to use the chords that I'm going to cover in this tutorial.
Alright, here's the Star of Munster reel, played at the traditional dancing speed of 113 BPM.
So yeah, with apologies to traditionalists, I want to spread the message of the Gypsy jazz chords because they're really fun for messing about with tunes in minor keys. Now we are going to deviate very slightly from all the kind of music theory rules that I've set down in previous videos in this one, and I'm going to try not to delve into the music theory too much because I want this to be a quick tips and tricks video that you can experiment with rather than a 3-hour diatribe of me waffling about music theory. Just to recap very briefly the small bit of music theory that we are going to do in this video, if we're in the key of A dorian, here we have A dorian just there, our main chords are going to be 1, 4 and 5 in A dorian, so that is A minor, D major and E minor. If you don't know why that is, I suggest before you have a go at any of this stuff that you check out my videos about how the modes work. They're linked in the box down below. They kind of explain all the music theory stuff, and it is important and useful to know about. If we start talking about adding sevens to things, adding 7 chords, so instead of using triads, using tetrads, 4-note chords instead. What we can do in the key of A dorian is use chords related to A minor 7. We can add various chord extensions as well, which we're going to do in a minute. And then for our 4 chord, it's got to be dominant, so it's got to be D7 or D9, D13, you know, stuff like that. And our 5 chord's got to be minor 7, so E minor 7, or things like that. And that's the sort of basic addition of tetrads. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about exactly why that is. If you want to understand more about that, check out my ebook. It's linked in the card at the corner of the screen. That shows you from complete beginner right up to using advanced jazz chords how all that stuff works. Anyway, with the jazz chords, Django Reinhardt kind of popularised this really cool shape, which I love and I use it for loads of stuff. The shape is basically an A minor 7 chord, like that's an A minor 7 bar chord, or that's a sort of easier, quicker to play A minor 7. So within this chord here, A minor 7, we've got A, the root, then G, the flattened 7th, then the minor 3rd, and then the 5th. So that's all of the notes of A minor 7 with the root note at the bottom, standard. To make it sound gypsy jazzy, you're going to kind of take your finger off from where it was fretting the flattened 7th and put that at the bottom, and then you're going to put your index finger so that it's fretting the 4th fret on the D string, which gives you an F sharp note. So if your key note is A for the chord, then F sharp is the 6th as it would be in the major scale. So effectively you've got an A minor add 13 now, and that sounds like this, because you've got the root, the 6th as it would be in the major scale, the minor 3rd and the 5th. Now if we're in the key of A dorian, you'll recall from my mode videos, again if you haven't seen them I suggest they're worth watching, they're in the box down below, that in dorian you've got, compared to a major scale, you've got a minor 3rd and a flattened 7th, but the 6th is the same as it would be in the major scale. So that's why this gypsy jazz chord works nicely in dorian, because you're adding the 6th note from the dorian scale to an A minor chord, effectively. So that's going to be our chord 1 in this gypsy jazz version of this tune. Our chord 4 would be D7, that one, and instead of D7 I'm going to play D9. So again, here is a little triangle that gives us a D7 chord, because that's D on the 5th fret of the A string. Then my index finger's fretting the 4th fret of the D string, which is the 3rd, the major 3rd compared to D, so F sharp. And then my 3rd finger's fretting the flattened 7th on the 5th fret of the G string. So I've got 1, 3, flat 7. With my little finger, I've got a D note there, and this is an E note, so compared to D, that's the 9th, which is another way of saying the 2nd, which is E. So I've got here a D9 chord, which is made up of 1, 3, flat 7, 9 at the top, and that gives us this really tasty kind of jazz hands D9 chord. Now the reason I'm going to use that shape is A, because it sounds cool as, but B, because to get to that from my chord 1, my Django chord, my A minor add 13, it's just a matter of moving this middle finger up a string. Like that. So that's a nice easy jazzy chord 4 for A dorian. Now with chord 5 it should be E minor. However, once you get into jazz territory, anytime you've got a chord which resolves down a 5th, or another way of thinking that is upper 4th, because that's the same thing. So in this case, from E minor, my chord 5, I'm going to resolve back down to A minor, so that's down 1, 2, 3, 4, and you include the one you start on, so down a 5th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back down to A dorian, A minor. Or I could call it resolving up a 4th, because 1, 2, 3, 4. But those are both the same thing. So anytime you're going to resolve down a 5th, you can swap out whatever sort of chord you have to a 7 chord, because 7 chords, when you hear them, they want to resolve down a 5th, and that's the whole foundation of blues and then swing and jazz and all that stuff. So I'm going to change my E minor chord, because we're now in jazz land, to being a type of E7 chord. And the type of E7 chord I'm going to go for is an E7 sharp 9. So you've got your little E7 triangle there, with middle finger on the 7th, playing your E. then your major third being supplied by the index finger, and then your flattened seventh being supplied by the third finger. And with the little finger, where that shape was a 9, if I move that little finger up 1 fret, now I've got a sharp 9. So this is an E sharp 9 chord. A lot of people call that the Hendrix chord, because Jimi Hendrix loved it and used it loads, just that shape moved about, like all the way through Purple Haze, for example. Etc. But anyway, its proper name is E sharp 9. So that's my 1, 4 and 5 sorted. So when you're first dividing the tune up into 1, 4 and 5, you can have a lot of fun just playing it with those 3. That kind of thing. A good thing with both the D9 and the E sharp 9 shapes is that by moving the middle finger back and forth between the A and E strings, you can get a kind of root, fifth, root, fifth, root, fifth, root, fifth. Bass line thing going on. So that's 1, 4 and 5 dealt with. If you then want to add in the rest of the chord scale, I could go into loads and loads of cool things you can do with this. There's so much potential, but I'm just going to cover a few basic things. So by just moving your first shape, this A minor add 13, up, you can get 3 chords from the chord scale which are useful. So you can use that one, that's your root. Instead of the B minor chord, you can just move that up 2 frets, so you've got B minor add 13. For a really gypsy jazz feel, instead of using what should be C major as your third chord, just get that shape and move it up 1 more fret. Now this is adding accidentals which shouldn't really be there, but it's kind of okay because you can get away with more once you start using jazz chords. You've gone into jazz land. Yeah, you can get away with it. It's okay. It might raise some eyebrows, but people will get into it. So that's going to be instead of your chord 3. Chord 4 we've already dealt with. That's going to be D9. Chord 5 is going to be that one, E sharp 9. Then chord 6, I mean there's lots of options for chord 6. For the F sharp chord, we're not going to use F sharp diminished. We're going to avoid it in the way that we normally do in the key of A dorian, which is by just using D with a thumb. For ease of playing with the other chords that I'm going to be using, I'm going to fret it slightly differently to normally. So I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to leave off the finger that normally goes on the top string. I'm going to put my little finger on the B string, 3rd fret. I'm going to put my ring finger on the G string, 2nd fret. And I'm going to put my middle finger on the bottom string, 2nd fret. So that is giving me what would be called D/F sharp, aka a D chord, but with the F sharp note in the root position. And that's going to be my chord 6 for this kind of gypsy jazz run. And the reason that I'm fretting it that way is because then it's very easy to slide into the next one, which is going to be this. If you recall that I said when chord 5 is resolving back to chord 1, you can play a dominant chord instead of chord 5. And that includes any dominants with further chord extensions or altered dominants like the E7 sharp 9 that I used before. Well, as a substitute, if you imagine E7, an E7 chord has got a major third in it. It should be an E minor chord, but we can use an E7 chord instead, which has a major third, because it's going to resolve down a 5th. E is here on the bottom string, and E's major third is there, G sharp. if I want to make E7 in the first inversion, so the notes would be E, G sharp, and then E's fifth, and then E's flat 7, so E's fifth is B, and E's flat 7 is D. I compile those notes up in another order and get G sharp diminished 7, which is this. Now with this G sharp diminished 7 chord, if you look at it, G sharp diminished 7 is this shape with that at the top, and if I add my little finger there, you've got the original Gypsy Jazz shape, and it's so close this makes no difference. So what we're going to do, instead of having a G chord at all, G is acting as a substitute for E minor. E minor can be substituted to E7, and E7 inverted more or less gives us the Gypsy Jazz shape, but moved down 1 fret from where we started. And that means that instead of having a G chord at all, we could just use the Gypsy Jazz shape on the 4th fret here, giving us what is technically known as G sharp minor add 13. So what that means is our complete Gypsy Jazz chord scale for the key of A dorian is going to go something like this. We've got the Gypsy Jazz shape starting on A minor, then we move it up 2 frets, so we've got the Gypsy Jazz shape starting on B minor, then we move it up 1 more fret to give us the L starting on C, then we go up to D9, 5th fret of the A string, then we go up to E7 sharp 9 on the 7th fret, otherwise known as the Hendrix chord, then down to this shape, which is D/F sharp, and then the Gypsy Jazz shape again on the 4th fret, which is G sharp, acting as a substitute for E7, and then we're back where we started. If you practice that as a complete chord scale, so you can do exercises like and then the other way going down, so it's a really good idea to practice the whole scale of chords in a row like that in both directions, because that's going to give you a really handy little go-to cool chord progression that will fit with tunes in A dorian, as long as you come back from 5 to 1 in the right places. So that brings me to the end of today's little Django infused folk session. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have fun messing about with these chord shapes. There are lots more things you can do with them as well, of course, like using them in other keys, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that too much today. Just experiment with them and see what you come up with. I'd love to know anything else you find to play them with. Let me know in the box down below any interesting experimental results that you come out with. I'd also love if you could do me a favour by hitting the little thumbs up button down below and the subscribe button, of course. Then you will get all my tutorials straight to your inbox as soon as they are made. I tend to make one every week, and I do a weekly live stream on Fridays at 5:30 PM UK time as well. In this week's one, which is going to be tomorrow, I will be covering how best to practice certain things. I'm going to be looking at some things like ear training exercises you can do, ways you can practice your guitar when you haven't actually got your guitar with you, and ways that you can streamline your folk music practice to make it more efficient. This is kind of a little precursor to what's coming out next week. I've got a brand new invention coming out, which is the Folk Friend Practice Diary. I've gone through everything that I've used over the years to make my guitar practice more effective, and I've kind of solidified it all into a 6-monthly format, which will help you get your goals definitely specified at the start, and then review them every week and every quarter in order to make sure that you achieve what you want to with less effort and hopefully less time spent faffing about and more time doing targeted practice. So keep an eye out for that. Tune in for Folky Fridays this Friday. If you want a Folk Friend t-shirt, they are now back to normal. Shipping's a little bit slower than usual with the coronavirus, but they are in production once more, so you can get hold of one at the link in the box below. The amazing mode wheel, a device like this, they're very, very useful, and they are available on finaleguitar.co.uk/shop, which you can find in a little card in the corner of the screen right now. And you can also check out my ebook if you're interested in learning loads more about music theory, strumming patterns, the styles of famous guitarists, all sorts of useful stuff in there, ear training, chord diagrams, loads of stuff. And of course there's lots of Gypsy jazz chords in there as well, in the back, in the chord diagram section. So yeah, check that out, it's linked at the end of the video. I'll be back very soon for more useful stuff, and hopefully I'll see you at the stream tomorrow or next week. Thanks for tuning in, see you again soon.